Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here, also known as ETCG1 when I post videos on this channel, and if it is your birthday, I want to wish you a very special happy birthday. Today's topic comes sort of from the headlines recently. It is early September 2017 and Hurricane Harvey has recently left Houston, Texas, and Hurricane Irma is barreling down on the Bahamas as of today. I wish all those people that have been affected by this tragedy a speedy recovery to normal life as fast as you can get there. My heart goes out to you. Years ago I was in the Hurricane Alicia that was down in Houston, and it wasn't nearly close to the devastation that they're dealing with now. I just remember that as far as storm damage, it was absolute. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about flooded cars. I'm sitting outside in my, what was it, 2002 or 3 Acura 3.5 RL. And it sort of sets the tone. I mean, it's been sitting out in basically a puddle for a long period of time. But I just wanted to impart a little bit of my experiences about flood cars that could possibly help you if you're either considering purchasing a flood car or you have a car that's been in a flood. And I also did some reading and some research before I did this video, and it pretty much confirmed my experiences and what I was going to tell you in this video. I'll put links in the description to any other pertinent information that may be useful to you. That being said, if your vehicle was in a flood and it was significantly flooded, in other words, the carpet got wet, anything up underneath the dash, anything that got above the rockers, and the higher up, the more this rings true, that car is totaled. Get rid of it. The car, truck, whatever. In my experience, flood cars are never the same, and you'll invest to try to get them back on the road. And then later on down the road is when that corrosion starts to creep in, particularly if you've had saltwater intrusion, like what happened a bit in Houston. Saltwater intrusion into a vehicle is pretty much death. It's vehicle death right then and there. And I know that that's a painful thing for many people to hear. They may have a car that they love that they lost in the flood. I think there was a video about a guy that spent a whole lot of time raising up his BMW little by little to try to keep it up above the floodwaters, and he was able to do exactly that, but it took a lot of effort to get there. That said, had that car been immersed in the water, like I said, I would have written it off as a total loss, because here's what you're up against. Mold and mildew, number one. Once the carpet gets wet, it pretty much needs to be replaced. I know that there are people out there that can clean them and that kind of thing, but in order to get to that point, you need to remove the carpet from the vehicle. Basically, to do anything with these flooded vehicles, you need to remove the entire interior and pretty much, well, I say replace the carpet, but then there's what happens to the upholstery and the seats and everything else once they get waterlogged. On those warm days after you've had those treatments, that flood smell never quite goes away. It always seems to be underneath. But more importantly, all the electronics. Electronics do not work well underwater. That's why they put them inside the vehicle. So once water starts to intrude into things like your computers and your body control modules and other electrical components and switches and things up underneath the dash and in the floor, those things are junk because they may not be directly affected in the moment, but as stated, especially with saltwater, corrosion happens a little bit further down the road, and once that corrosion starts to set in, it's intermittent electrical nightmares that is never ending. Never ending. So my advice to anyone thinking about purchasing a flood vehicle is don't, but if you're absolutely insistent upon it because you think it's a good deal, take it to a certified mechanic and have them look it over first so that you can at least get them to sign off on it if they will. If somebody brought it to me and said, this car was in a flood, can you look it over for me? I would do exactly that, but I would also, at the start of that conversation, before ever bringing the vehicle in to look at it, tell them what I just told you now. Flood vehicles, after they've been in a flood, are next to never right afterwards. So it's pretty much a write-off at that point. It just seems to me that if you invest in that vehicle, you're just going to be throwing good money over bad as opposed to getting a replacement vehicle. But the bottom line with this, I'm not going to go through all the details of how to repair a flooded car because I don't advocate doing that. If your vehicle is in a flood, especially a significant flood like what they saw in Houston, total it out, write it off, move on. Because at that point it's a parts car, if that. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I would rather you err on the side of caution than, as stated, try to throw good money over bad. Anyway, I'll put links in the description to relief funds for Harvey, and if by the time this video comes out, anything that might get involved with Irma as well. My thoughts and prayers go out to you people that have been affected by this tragedy. And once again, I hope for a speedy return to normal life when you can get there. One more quick thing on flood cars. If the vehicle was submerged enough to where there's the possibility that water got into the engine, do not attempt to start it. It can exhibit something called hydrostatic lock, meaning the cylinders fill up with water and the pistons can't compress that. And that could bend a connecting rod or damage the engine further. As stated previously, I don't think vehicles that have been submerged that much are worth salvaging, but if you're bent on trying to bring your vehicle back, then make sure that there's no water in the engine when you first start it up. In fact, I recommend you take it to a qualified mechanic to have that checked out. Another thing I thought of was if you're purchasing a vehicle and you suspect that it was in a flood, as I mentioned, there's the mildew smell that is very distinctive, and a lot of times they use a lot of chemicals to try to cover that up. So if it smells like really strong air freshener, like they might be covering something up, that could be a red flag. Also, silt. Silt is something that no matter what you do, seems like it's going to be there somewhere. So like you run your hand up underneath the dash and you look for just that fine material that goes along with the water, just like very fine dust, and that's something that never really goes away either. So if you see that coating components, I'd try to avoid that vehicle. But I can't stress enough how if you're purchasing a used vehicle, I strongly suggest you take it to an experienced mechanic to have it checked out before you purchase it to avoid any issues. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching. If you have automotive questions not covered in this video, I ask that you head over to air@thecarguy.com, also linked in the description. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.